Hello, in the news from the television company Ostankiно. I'll begin the broadcast not with political and economic events of today, but with reports dedicated to the memory of the first cosmonaut of the planet, Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin. Today, this brave and charming man would have turned 60 years of age. The President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, laid a wreath to the grave of Yuri Gagarin by the Kremlin wall. There probably is no person on earth who doesn't know this name, Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin. And for many people, this name personifies the field of cosmonaut work as a whole. And on the birthday of the 60th birthday of Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin, let's again remember the man and honor the memory and the image which he carries. We congratulate all the people of the planet. During the 1.5 hours in orbit around the Earth, we don't see borders on the planet. I would like very much that these borders not existed at all on the planet, nor in the cooperation in developing space. And we must remember that Gagarin wanted that space should be peaceful, and we also must strive to make space peaceful as well. His name has been engraved on the tablets of history in gold letters. Yuri Alexeyevich himself said that he's no better nor worse than any others, at least in the first rank of cosmonauts. Then why did the Columbus of the universe become Gagarin? Previously, it was explained by the advantages of socialism. It was considered that only in the framework of this system could a peasant son achieve such a giant leap. But apparently, the capitalist reality knows also examples of a shoeshiner who becomes a millionaire. Evidently, luck turns toward those who are in some small way better than others, a little more intelligent, charming, and brave. And all of this is what is probably called the foreordainment by the finger of God, which people receive despite their origins. And Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin is one of the brightest examples. About his space launches, much was said and will be said, but we know little about his personal life. He himself did not like intrusions into his personal life, and after all, it was not accepted then in the Soviet country. And here are only a few shots. And here's another riddle. Guess. It has no legs, but it walks. It has no secrets, but it will talk. When to have lunch, to get up, and when to begin work. What is it? A clock. Yes, right, Lena. She knows everything. Let's give her such a riddle that she doesn't know the answer to. Listen. This one you don't know. A white tablecloth covers the entire field. Cover your nose. What is that? The white tablecloth that covered the field. Snow. She knows that too. Watch your nose. There's a great frost ahead. To imagine Gagarin as 60 years of age is difficult, if at all possible. He will remain always young, 1 year older than Jesus Christ. And now briefly about the other important events of the day. President Yeltsin has refused to meet with the ex-president of the United States, Nixon. A tragedy on Kamchatka. 6 soldiers have been killed. Observers of the European Security and Cooperation Council noted the non-democratic nature of the elections in Kazakhstan. The Central Election Commission disapproves. 80-year anniversary of Taras Shevchenko is celebrated triumphantly in Ukraine. Moscow remains the arena of intense diplomatic talks on the Yugoslavian problem. This has been affirmed by the official meetings held in the capital and reported is being prepared, and we will show it to you a little later, what and how it happened in Moscow. Unexpectedly complicated were the developments in the visit to Russia of the ex-president of the United States, Richard Nixon. The President Boris Yeltsin said a few words in this regard, but to understand, I'll tell you briefly what has happened. During the current visit to Moscow, Richard Nixon met with the recently released from the prison in Lefortovo Alexander Rudskoy and other leaders of the parliamentary opposition. The former American president, Mr. Nixon, met here with Rudskoy and also with Zyuganov. And the thing is that he was coming in order to meet with me, which is most unclear. And here, I'm told that the President of the United States, Clinton, phoned and said that he's here on his own, and we're on our own, that is. And do you understand? In other words, he does not support such a position. And in general, how can one do this? To come to a country and to seek here certain stains, so to speak. Are you going to host him, the ex-president? No. After this, no. And the government will not welcome him. And Filatov also will not see him. Let him know. Russia, after all, is a great country. And to simply play with her in this fashion and in this way, I feel like it, I want this today, and tomorrow I will want that. Now, this is not appropriate. We now, with the Americans, after all, answering more deeply to your question, we with the Americans must work out our relationship, and we want in Vladivostok to have a meeting of the ministers of foreign affairs on such a level that, after all, the American-Russian partnership should be preserved and is being preserved, and it must be. And under no circumstances would we take this great acquisition, which was achieved with such labor. We must not lose it, and I'm convinced we will not lose it. I thank you. Thank you. Richard Nixon, who is in Russia on a personal visit, was refused today in the use of the services of a security automobile, which had previously been provided by the Russian side. This was stated at a press conference by the advisor of Nixon, the famous American political scientist Dmitry Simes, who was accompanying the ex-president on the trip. The former president of the United States, Nixon, does not intend to interrupt his visit to Russia. This was stated today at a briefing by the advisor of Richard Nixon, the famous American political scientist Dmitry Simes. According to him, Richard Nixon was perplexed and disappointed by the refusal of Boris Yeltsin to meet with him. The American political scientist noted that the meeting of Richard Nixon with the leaders of the Russian opposition did not at all mean support of official Washington of the political opponents of Yeltsin. At the briefing, it was emphasized that Richard Nixon is in Moscow, not on an official but personal visit. The aim of his visit is to acquaint himself with what is happening in Russia and its political forces. Richard Nixon has not canceled his visit today. Obviously, the situation will not influence seriously the relations between our countries, but even without these complications, they are not simple. The delegation of the State Duma of the Russian Federation, headed by its chairman, Ivan Rybkin, completed today its visit to the United States and flew to Moscow. Details in the report of our correspondent. The meeting of Ivan Rybkin in the capital of the United States is a type of a pretense. For the Americans, this is an attempt to understand who is he, the new head of the parliament, to what extent does he lean on the new powers in the Duma, and what policy does he intend to pursue. For Russian guests, this is a chance to become acquainted. The Supreme Soviet of Russia in America, especially lately, was called reactionary, anti-reformist, and the Duma is not referred to in this way, at least not out loud. The Speaker of the House of the Representatives, Thomas Foley, said that the Duma was was created by lawful means. We respect the choice of Russians and will work together with your parliament. And in response, Ivan Rybkin stated that cooperation with the United States is an absolute priority of Russia. Official statements, however, don't always reflect nuances, and almost never. The espionage matter, so to speak, is still hot on everyone's lips. Russian initiatives in Bosnia and the amnesty of the opponents of President Yeltsin. Where will the Russian economy head? All of these are questions and problems for the United States, among which Russia and what we call the near foreign countries. Edward Shevardnadze is in Washington at the same time as Ivan Rybkin. Clinton supported his proposal to send to the Georgian-Abkhazian conflict UN peacekeeping forces. And as is stated, the Americans would be against Russia's participation in these forces. A holy place is never idle. We can't realistically help to establish peace beyond the Caucasus. They'll surely invite the Americans, even if they're not American soldiers. In the meantime, Robert Dole, the Republican leader, gives us to understand that aid to Russia in the changed situation could be re-examined. We're sovereign nations. We have different values and different objectives. Possibly someday this will be a partnership. It seems here in Congress, in the quarters of American power, the final decision on the nature of the relations with Russia is not yet formulated. But true, there are less and less talks about friendship. What is partnership? It must yet be defined. And now we are prepared to tell you about these dialogues which occurred in Moscow today on the regularization of the conflict in former Yugoslavia. Russian diplomacy took further steps today to achieve progress in the regularization of the Bosnian conflict. At midday, talks began between Andrej Kozyrev with the Premier of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Haris Seladic. Upon the completion, the ministers said that Russia is against discrimination toward any of the conflicting sides and insists on a balanced approach. Haris Seladic stated that the Washington agreement is not directed against the Serbs and does not leave them on the sidelines. He expressed hope that the Russian peacekeeping forces will help Sarajevo become a symbol of peaceful coexistence of various nationalities on Bosnian territory. In the afternoon talks, Andrej Kozyrev said, with his Croatian colleague Matej Granic, also emphasized that it is necessary to progress along the path of settling the crisis using the positive impulse injected into the process lately. Answering the questions of journalists, Kozyrev stated that Russia never took the position of creating in Bosnia 3 separate independent nations. There is another plan. The main thing is to preserve the territorial wholeness and the statehood of Bosnia-Herzegovina. And in the presence of a mutually acceptable decision between 3 constituents and forming nationalities. Here's the essence of that search which is underway toward the regularization of the Bosnian problem. The Croatian minister noted the positive role of Russia in this process and also affirmed the need to observe territorial wholeness and the sovereignty of Bosnia. And switching to the economic chronicle of the day, again I will quote the President Yeltsin. This year Russia will not buy abroad either grain, wool or linen. All of these products we have in abundance in our storehouses and they are of good quality, said he to the journalists today. The Presidium of the Government of Russia has ratified today the resolution on the position of the Russian economy and perspectives for its development in 1994. And yet one may suppose that the battles regarding the Russian budget and further reforming of the country will not cease quickly. Journalists who are following the political career of Yegor Gaidar know well his strengths and weaknesses. But today they discovered a new Gaidar for themselves. He justified himself. Several days ago, rumors began to circulate, which to my deep regret were repeated by my respected colleague Sergei Mikhailovich Shakrai, that I appealed with a request to the West to cease aid to Russia, while Chernomyrdin and Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin are in power. I have the honor to officially state that this announcement is purely a lie. The basic theme of the press conference of the leader of the bloc, Russia's choice in parliament, were the perspectives of the stabilization of the financial policy of the country. Speaking about the fact, does Russia need aid from Western countries today, Yegor Gaidar answered that the situation has changed over the last 2 years. As premier, he called the export credits, which, according to his words, were truly necessary 2 years ago. However, for the most part, they ceased to be indispensable. According to Igor Gaidar, the first priorities are the directions of economic policy, and most important is everything connected with the opening of markets of developed Western economies for Russian goods. Speaking about the project of the state budget for the current year, Igor Gaidar said that he's not prepared to support this project. In his opinion, the document needs corrections on several essential directions. The policy of the government of Russia, Igor Gaidar called extremely contradictory. And probably another new topic for Gaidar. Today, he especially harshly criticized the overly expanded and little controlled Russian bureaucracy. And it is difficult to disagree with such criticism, even if it had been said, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago. Russian Gazprom for now does not intend to further decrease the volume of gas delivered to Ukraine before the beginning of talks on this problem. They must begin in Moscow tomorrow. For now, deliveries of fuel to Ukraine as well as to Belarus continue in a reduced volume. Ukraine today transferred to the account of Russian Gazprom $7 million in order to liquidate its debt for fuel. However, as HHS reports, the sum is not commensurate with the size of the debt, which today exceeds trillions of rubles. The arrival of the delegation of Ukraine is expected in the evening. By two or three times last year, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia had to reduce the consumption of natural gas. Although Estonia had paid almost all of its debts for gas, Latvia and Lithuania still owe tens of billions of rubles. And so the signing of the agreement on the conditions of delivering Russian fuel to the Baltic countries, hence, is the normalization of relations of the auctioneer society Gazprom with the northwestern region. The basis of the signing of the agreement on such a long-term basis is planned for a minimum of 10 to 15 years. The reliability, predictability, and now the question of the integration of the participation and the role of Gazprom in the privatization of companies. This is part of the talks which regarded companies involved in consumption of Russian gas. In Estonia, there already is a positive experience. 30% of the shares of Estongas belong to Gazprom. The auctioneer society has its share in the chemical plant Netrofir and other companies. In that same direction, it was decided to cooperate with Latvia and Lithuania when the republics will adopt legislature protecting ownership. The market economy dictates new conditions for cooperation, which Gazprom is developing today with the Baltic countries, and later this experience will be transferred to other countries of near and distant foreign countries. The strike continues at the major association Vorkuta coal and the northern mine. Strikers are demanding immediate December salaries with indexation in accordance to the growth of inflation, and to receive salaries for January and February. And 2 units of the rescue work units of that coal mine decided to announce their strike today. They are also demanding salaries for November. The situation in the coal regions is complicated by the number of accidents at the mines. Today in Donetsk, it is a day of mourning. Today, the miners of Donbass say goodbye to their comrades who died on the 6th of March during an accident at the Don mine in the city Kirovsk of the Donetsk district. To participate in the mournful ceremonies came delegations from coal cities, representatives of government, and directors of the district. 13 who died underground, and 2 died later in hospital. So many human lives the tragedy carried away, which happened at one of the digging sites of the mines. In the district burn center, doctors are conducting the fight for the lives of 4 miners who were heavily traumatized. The reasons for the accident have not yet been established. There is a version, however, that in the coal vault where explosive work was underway, there was a methane explosion or a conflagration of it, but what preceded it is not yet clear. The precise answer to the question what happened in the underground shaft at 1700 hours 30 minutes will be given by an authoritative commission of independent experts which are currently working at the mine. The time limits for the investigation are extremely rigid. The government of Ukraine, miners' collectives and unions are providing assistance to the families of the victims. And one more tragedy occurred today at one of the border patrol posts in the region of the Kuril Islands. The report sounds unbelievable. 2 military servicemen shot their own fellow workers and shot down a helicopter. This is at the first outpost of the Pacific Ocean border area. In the press center of the command of the border troops, they said that the patrolmen and the shift guard on the morning of the 8th of March opened random fire from automatic weapons in the barracks. As a result, 6 soldiers of the service were killed, 3 injured. After the firing in the barracks, the 2 shot at the helicopter as well. Among those on board, there are no casualties. They say the reason for the tragedy was temporary insanity. And several brief notes. I would like to complete the political picture of the day, and afterwards a report from Kazakhstan on the preliminary results of the elections there. Again, the situation in Northern Ossetia has severely deteriorated. At the demonstration in the suburban area, and they accused the temporary administration and loyal forces of idleness. In the destabilization of the situation in the Northern Caucasus and the unsettled Russian-Chechnya relations, Grozny accuses the Minister on National Affairs and Regional Policy, Sergei Shakrai, and also expresses hopes that the dialogue process will be taken over by such politicians as Sergei Filatov and Viktor Chernomyrdin. The Tajik opposition has agreed to come to Moscow for talks with the government of Tajikistan. And now Kazakhstan. Today, the information agencies and our correspondents since morning were telling us about the preliminary results of the elections in Kazakhstan. As you know, they happened on the 7th of March, and according to reports, the voters were quite active. Although observers of the European Security and Cooperation Council stated that the elections did not conform to international legal norms, and this statement evoked a severely negative reaction from the Central Election Commission of Kazakhstan. Almost 75% of the voters participated in the elections, and they were held, as the Central Election Commission said, in all 135 polling districts. The progress of the elections was observed by representatives of foreign countries, the UN, the European Security and Cooperation Council, and other international organizations. I think that this was the first time when in Kazakhstan there was such a large number of candidates for such a restricted number of seats, which gave the voters a real choice. The uniqueness of the current election system is that for the first time candidates were registered on so-called government lists, which evoked a varied reaction from some observers. For Western countries, this is somewhat unusual and atypical, but I think the decision on this matter will be made by the new parliament, which, if necessary, will amend the law on elections. And from informed sources in Almaty, it became known that among the authorities of Kazakhstan, there is a study underway of the statement of the objections of the European Council, and the answer came by evening. The response was the results of the elections will not be annulled. Today, in the Ministry of Defense of the FRG in Bonn, with military honors, they greeted Pavel Grachev, who began his 3-day visit to Germany. The center of his discussions with his German colleague, Volk Ruhr, is the deepening cooperation between the armies of the two countries. Germans will share their experience in the questions of ecology, and they plan to send German officers to the Academy Frunze and Russians to the Academy of the Bundeswehr in Hamburg. The Ministry of Defense, on the eve of the visit, emphasized that we need to avoid discrimination against Russia and always share information with her. The ministers discussed the new situation formed in the former Yugoslavia. Mutual interaction of the German and Russian armies, which provides for joint training, must be clearly manifested after Russia joins the NATO program Partnership for Peace. Pavel Grachev at the press conference stated that Russia will react negatively to the expansion of NATO through the Eastern European countries. And of course, everyone is interested, how will the official farewell ceremonies be arranged for the Western group of forces? To date, there is no clarity on this problem. And finally, our side is being given proposals from the Department of the Federal Chancellor. The Germans are proposing to conduct a triumphant meeting with the Chancellor and the Russian President on the 31st of August. That is the last day of the withdrawal. But why not in Berlin, but in Weimar, a city which is far from Berlin, which the Soviet army did not even liberate at the end of the war? The Americans entered Weimar. The decision of the Chancellor will be unexpected even for the Western allies of the Federal Republic of Germany. Today, the press says that the Chancellor is against the farewell military parades in Berlin planned for the beginning of September. Therefore, not we alone, will be disappointed. Today in Bonn, the consultative meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Germany, Klaus Kinkel, with the heads of the foreign political departments of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. The sides discussed the perspective of closer ties for Baltic countries with the European Union and the future framework of the architecture of the overall European Security Union and the problems of relations of Baltic countries with Russia. The Israeli State Commission on the investigation of the tragedy in Hebron visited the city today and examined the site of the crime committed by the extremist Israeli settler. Acquaintance with the mosque, which is a holy place for the followers of Islam and Judaism, is necessary for the members of the Commission to clarify all the details of the event. Months and years pass by, but the borders between the countries of the European Community and currently the European Union don't wish to open completely as it was decided in 1985 in Schengen. Initially, France, Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, Italy, Spain, Portugal and Greece signed an agreement providing the removal of all restrictions on free movement among them for their citizens. It was also planned to initiate a procedure of issuing visas for people from other countries, and the main thing, to develop a mechanism of close cooperation between their border police services in order to deal with underground immigration, crime and narcotics trade. However, one date replaced another, and even the last time limit for the execution of the agreement passed by. That was the 1st of February of 1994, and that also passed by. The problem was of a technical nature. The information computer systems, which were supposed to connect the border troops of all 9 countries, was apparently in no condition to accomplish the goal in full scale. In March, experts must give an answer to, is it possible to correct the situation or begin everything anew? And then the perspectives of abolishing the internal borders in the European Council will be postponed for at least another 3 years. Yesterday evening, the academician Stanislav Yakovlev died. His death was unexpected. A few days ago, he was operating, giving lectures, and was writing his book. More than 50 years he gave to pediatric surgery, and with gratitude he's remembered by parents whose children he saved, and also his former patients, many of whom have become parents. Stanislav Yakovlevich left behind his inventions, methodologies, monographs, essays, and he also left an entire school of students who continue his path. Will television continue to work, and will it be government or private? And if so, in what scale? This is a question which is of concern not only to us, but to you, the television viewers, I think just as much. Today, President Yeltsin hosted the director of television, Alexander Yakovlev and Oleg Poptsov. According to Tartas, Boris Yeltsin affirmed today that the television station Ostankino and Rossiyski channel must be government-controlled, or else Yeltsin feels we could, that is, television, lose it. It could be ripped apart by various parties and movements. But will there be money? This was not mentioned. And now, all parents, please pay attention. I think many of you have children of school age. But to the question, will they have textbooks next year? You'll find out from this report, which you will see in a moment. The human is created in such a way that social dramas are far less important to him than his own. And based on that, I think the members of our government probably have no school children. Otherwise, they'd be concerned about the fact that by the beginning of the school year, each third student will not receive a single textbook, because in the Ministry of Education, there is a true drama. The printing companies Saratov, Smolensk and Tverskoy stopped the lines printing textbooks. They're to be understood. The prepayment demanded by any producer now, the Ministry of Education cannot make. The government has not paid the balance, 60 billion promised rubles. And the local administration, on which was counted in Moscow, cannot share the expense for textbooks, since of the 86 Russian districts, 66 are absolutely not credit-worthy. The process which began will probably go as follows. For this school year, there will be a shortage of books. Next year, no one will order them. And those which are printed are already valuable and in shortage for children of the provinces. And what do you propose? There's only one way out, that is subsidizing by the government and the issue of free textbooks, in accordance with the 43rd statute of the Constitution, for which we recently voted together. Today, the 108th year since the birthday of Taras Shevchenko was celebrated. We received a report from Kiev talking about the celebrations there, but to preface it, I would like to say that the people of St. Petersburg also honored his memory. In the ancient building of the Academy of Arts, there was a triumphant memorial evening. Today, it is 180 years since the birthday of the great Ukrainian poet and artist Taras Grigorievich Shevchenko. According to tradition of birthday celebrations in this day in Kiev, it is begun with the laying of flowers to the tomb of the great national artist. And also, a bow was made by the President of Ukraine, Leonid Kravchuk. In the Museum of Taras Shevchenko, the day is also festive, but the museum workers have a double happiness. The known Swiss firm, Mark Rich, gave an original work of the artist Shevchenko, a portrait of this young man, to the museum. This work at one time had been bought by the firm from a private collector. And today in the museum, toasted were the new laureates of the Shevchenko Award. Today, this state award in the name of Taras Shevchenko is one of the highest and most prestigious in Ukraine for writers, artists, and actors. Among the current laureates of the award is the Russian writer Leonid Bolshakov, the author of the trilogy, The Ode to Taras. And since antiquity, the Russian Orthodox Church was and will remain the keeper and the carrier of the history of the Russian nation. The symbol of the return to its roots today was the elevation of the cross over the Spasa Transfiguration Cathedral of the St. Nicholas Monastery in the city Dzerzhinsky. This is not far from the Moscow Circle Road. Because of inclement weather and incapability to fly, hour by hour was postponed the elevation of the Gildan 500-kilometer cross of a height of almost 8 meters over the main dome of the largest Moscow and district cathedral. And as a result, without exaggeration, of the precise work of the crew of the helicopter of the Michkov Associated Aviation Unit under the command of Viktor Ivanov and the group of mounters, the cross stood up on the prepared spot at almost an 80-meter altitude. And from behind the clouds, the sun peeked out. The St. Nicholas Monastery was established by the order of the virtuous Prince Dmitry Donskoy in the year 1380, on the spot where, by tradition, he had a visitation from the icon of St. Nicholas the Wonder Worker. This happened when the great prince was leading the Russian units to the Mamayev battle. After it closed in 1920, the monastery was a memorial to the victories of the Russian troops, a symbol of the unification of Russia. And in 1991, the monastery was returned to the Russian Orthodox Church, and its rebirth began, a major landmark of which was today's event. One would want to believe in good signs. And with this, that is all the news I have. In a moment, Daria Chervonenko will tell you about the news of sports, and I say goodbye to you. All the best. Good evening. In the championships of the International Hockey League, there were 4 matches played today. The Wings of the Soviets against Spartak, 7-4. The Metallurg from Magnitogorsk beat the Torpedoes from Usk-Kamenogorsk 3-2. Same score for Salavat Yulive to the Kuznetsk Metallurg, 3-2. Tractors Strelitsev, 6-2. I will return to the theme of hockey in a moment, but for now, the soccer news. In the first quarter-final games of the Youth Soccer Championships of Europe, the team of Russia in Paris lost to their French team with a score of 0-2. And the news of track and field. Yelena Romanova in Tokyo won in the 5,000-meter race with a result of 16 minutes, 12 seconds, beating her famous contenders. The news of freestyle. The silver Lillehammer winner Sergei Shupritsov at the World Cup Championships in the Alps this time was second in the moguls, losing by 1/100th of a second to the French Edgar Gasparian, who at the Lillehammer Olympiad was the bronze winner. Among the women, the best is the American Donna Weinberg and the second Olympian champion Stina-Lise Hattenstad from Norway. This video was taken by our freestyle trainer, Mikhail Vasilyev. In the Finnish student center Julesk Ule, the World Championship for juniors was completed. The Russian women athletes here won 1 gold medal, 3 silver, and 1 bronze medal. Yelena Voronova won the silver in the moguls, Rita Alenikova the bronze, and also the silver in the acrobatics. Maria Tarigina became the champion in the combinations. And so the newer generation is growing. In the regular championships of the National Hockey League, there were 2 matches. I'll note one of them. The Pittsburgh team hosted the Boston Bears. The Penguins won 7-3, and 1 goal of Mario Wenger, who returned. And in the other match, Philadelphia hosted Dallas. To have a victory, overtime was necessary, and it was successful for Dallas. On the 3rd minute, Neil Brott helped his team enter the 2 goals into the tournament scores, and as a result, Dallas won 4-3.